frost had spread across the fields, and the tall Lucerne grass was still green but sparkling with ice. I was walking through the meadow, watching a bird of prey circling far above, when suddenly something moved in the grass. At first I only saw a flash of orange, but my heart jumped. I crouched down immediately and raised my camera. And there it was, a fox. It was digging through the grass, completely unaware of me. Since I had nowhere else to be, I stayed where I was, quietly hoping the fox might move closer. But suddenly, a dog barked loudly somewhere in the distance. Both the fox and I froze. The fox lifted its head, then instantly leapt through the meadow, running east across the field. I watched it with awe as its fiery fur flashed through the frost-covered grass. Eventually it stopped at the edge of a field, and for a moment we looked at each other. We were far apart, but close enough. I took a single photo before the fox disappeared. But one thing about it caught my attention immediately. Its tail hung strangely, as if it had once been broken and never healed properly. That detail stayed in my mind. Weeks passed, and October turned into November. The weather was dark and rainy for days, making wildlife photography almost impossible. But on November the 2nd, I decided to explore a new location, a wet, swampy area near a river where beavers had transformed the land into a maze of water, reeds, and mud. It was still early morning. So early, in fact, that the sun hadn't even risen yet. As I carefully moved through the reeds, I suddenly heard movement. I froze. Another sound. Then suddenly, a fox burst out of the reeds and ran right past me. It happened so quickly I barely saw it. But I thought I recognized that tail, the strangely hanging tail. Later, while walking back along the shallow river, I saw the fox again, standing on the opposite bank, watching me quietly. I managed to take a quick photo, and that's when I realized this might be the same fox from October. As winter approached, the sightings continued. Sometimes I would see the fox for only a few seconds as it ran past me. Sometimes it never noticed me at all, but slowly it became oddly familiar. Then, in January, after weeks of freezing weather, I saw it again. Snow covered everything, and in the middle of the wild field sat a fox. At first I assumed it would run away, but it didn't. Through my camera lens, I noticed what it was doing. In front of it lay a hedgehog. The hedgehog had curled up into a tight ball, making it extremely difficult for the fox to eat. That's when I realized something else. This fox was old. One of its eyes was enlarged. Its movements were slow. It struggled just to get a bite of food. I watched the fox for a long time that day, both fascinated and a little saddened. Winter's always hard for wild animals, but for an old fox, it can be especially difficult. On January 23rd, during one of the coldest periods of the winter, I was in my fenced garden photographing birds that had gathered around the feeders. Suddenly I stopped. Just a few meters away, outside the fence, sat a fox. It was calm. It was watching me and my dog, and instantly I recognized it. The same fox, the senior fox. But before anything more could happen, a neighbor opened their door and startled it. The fox ran off immediately. Still, that moment stayed with me. Seeing the fox so close to the village made me worry. Was it coming closer because he couldn't find enough food? That evening, after thinking carefully and doing some research, I made a difficult decision. I would leave some raw meat in the fields during the coldest nights. Only a small amount, just enough to help the fox survive the harsh temperatures. There are risks when feeding wild animals, and it is something that should never be done carelessly. But in this case, the fox already seemed to be searching near the village, and the cold was brutal. Some nights dropped below -30 degrees Celsius. The next morning, I saw footprints in the snow, and the meat I had put out was gone. The senior fox had found it. During the coldest week of winter, the fox appeared frequently in the fields near the village. I often watched from a distance as it searched patiently through the snow, step by step, row by row, listening for mice beneath the frozen ground. Every night I placed a small piece of meat on a wooden plate in the snow, and every morning it was gone. But the fox never approached me, and that was good. Wild animals should stay wild. One evening, I went out later than usual to leave food. The sky was clear and full of stars. As I walked across the field, I suddenly heard footsteps in the snow, and I looked up. A dark shape was approaching. Even in the darkness, I knew what it was. The fox. I quickly placed the meat down and moved away, hiding behind the fence post. The fox approached cautiously. Then it stopped, its head lifted. It had seen me. For a moment we simply stood there. Then it turned and ran into the darkness. The coldest part of winter eventually passed. I stopped leaving food. Life slowly returned to normal. But one day, while photographing birds near the fence, I looked out across the snowy field and saw something that made my heart drop. An orange shape lying completely still in the snow. My mind immediately feared the worst. I slowly walked towards it, watching through my camera lens for any movement, but nothing. The snow crunched loudly under my feet as I got closer. Then, suddenly, the fox moved. It lifted its head. The senior fox was just sleeping. Startled by my approach, it stood up and looked at me in confusion. I took one quick photo. Then I turned around and walked away. The fox ran off shortly after, but stopped in the distance to watch me leave. That was the last time I saw the senior fox this close. Since then, I have only spotted it far out in the fields where it hunts. The fields are still its territory. And maybe sometime this year we will meet again. Some animals pass through your life only once, most of them, in fact. But others, they leave a story behind. For me, that story will always be the senior fox.